up, you guys? It's the Curious Owl here, and today I am giving you guys my January wrap-up. So most of you must have already seen the February TBR because I had to post that out a little early because of the BookTube games and Blackathon and Contemporary-a-thon. So I'm sorry that that's kind of out of order for what I normally do, but don't worry, my February stuff and my March stuff will go out normally this time. But so in January, I had read 6 books before the end of the month, and I can't believe I actually did that, but also it was my first full month out of school, so I didn't really have a whole lot to do other than look for jobs and stuff. And personally in my life, January was really, really hard for me because I'm struggling finding a job and things of that nature. So books were pretty much my escape this past month, and they are going to continue to be in February until I find a job and stuff like that. So it's been a bit of a rocky month, but my books, I'm very happy to say, were pretty good this month. I was pretty impressed with how my reading was. Everything was at least a 3-star or higher, so I can't complain. It was a pretty good month. To get into the stats for the month, I read a total of 1,558 pages and listened to 1 audiobook that was 15 hours and 40 minutes. 3 of my books were physical, 2 were ebooks, 1 was an audiobook. 5 out of the 6 of the books I read were from my own personal collection, and there was only 1 that was borrowed, which was my audiobook for the month. So the first book I finished in January was Revival by Stephen King. I did a review for this that is now up on my channel, so you can go check out for some more of my in-depth thoughts. But in general, I was kind of let down by this. I think that there were a lot of things that were good going for it, but in the end, I had a lot of unanswered questions. The structure was not, I think, particularly what I would have done for this story. I felt like there was a lot of exposition leading up to the meat of the story that could have been cut out, but overall it wasn't too bad. I still did enjoy the story, and I did enjoy learning a lot about the main character Jamie and his life and how he's connected to this character Reverend Charles Jacobs, that it pretty much left me feeling a little unsatisfied at the end, but overall not too awful of an ending. It just really was not what I expected it to be, and I ended up giving it a 3 out of 5 stars. The second book I finished was the group book for the biannual Bibliothon, which ran in January, and that was Empress of All Seasons by Emiko Jean. Unfortunately, I had some high expectations for this, and I was let down quite a bit. I ended up giving this a 3 out of 5 stars, and I was not particularly happy with it because I felt like it was way too rushed. And while I loved learning all about the Japanese folklore and mythology, I really loved that aspect of the entire story, I felt like just the whole thing was so rushed and compact that I wish there was so much more to the story. I felt like the ending of it especially just shouldn't have been the ending. I feel like there should have been a lot more added to the story, and I just was left kind of unsatisfied. And I will say, though, that it did have some really great emotional pull to it, and that's why I kept reading it, but overall, it was just really too rushed for me, and I wish that there would have been more to the story. The next book I actually have a physical copy of, but I ended up lending it to one of my sister's teammates because she wanted to read it, and that was The Merciless 2 by Daniel Vega. I ended up lending her the first 2 books since I haven't read the 3rd and 4th one yet, and I was really blown away with how much I loved The Merciless 2. I read the first Merciless book in my senior year of high school, and I really, really loved it. And normally I am not one for gore and horror. I tend to stay away from those kinds of things because I'm a big freaking chicken. But The Merciless, for some reason, when I first read it, was just so engaging, and it was a little bit of torture porn, don't get me wrong, but I was just so enamored with the story, and I loved the idea that was going for this entire story. And The Merciless 2 basically picks up after the very end of the first Merciless story, where we have Sophia, who has just experienced this awful exorcism gone wrong that has killed all of her friends, and unfortunately for her, she's still dealing with all those things. She's being told that by her therapist that she experienced kind of a mental breakdown at the murder of her friends, and unfortunately things are kind of gone even more haywire since then. In The Merciless 2, unfortunately, Sophia's mother gets in a car accident and dies, and because her grandmother is elderly and is very incapacitated, Sophia can't really live with anyone. She has no other family that's able to take care of her, so she's sent off to a Catholic school where she's able to stay for the time being and finish her education. But the entire time she's there, and for the majority of the story, she has these flashbacks and what I would consider kind of almost like PTSD symptoms of the events that happened in the first Merciless story. And unfortunately for her, it leads to some very, very dark things happening as she gets involved with a guy who is kind of dark. That's all I will say about him. He's just dark. I really loved this book a lot, but I only ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars because unfortunately I don't think that I was as enamored with all the torture porn that was going on. I feel like after reading the first one and having given it some time after reading it, there's a lot of things that I was not okay with and that I'm not okay with now, and I feel like in this novel specifically, I felt there was a lot of unnecessary gore that happened, but also I was just taken aback by just the sheer balls to go that far in Daniel Vega. And while it was really captivating to read in the moment, the entire time I'm just sitting there, I just feel my guts like just roiling in disgust, and I'm just like so scared the entire time. And while that's good because that's kind of the point of the story, felt like some of the gore was a little unnecessary. The next book I finished was Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin Alir Sainz. I also just did a review for this as this was my December TBR pick for 2018. I did like this novel quite a lot. I also gave this a 4 out of 5 stars because the majority of the story really just was a huge lead up to understanding what the point even was of learning about this friendship between Aristotle and Dante, and I just felt like that could have been told so much earlier, and then I would have been able to enjoy the lead up to the moment where that is revealed for the first time. And I don't know, I just didn't care for that, although I did really like learning about Ari and Dante and learning about their friendship and things of that nature. But if you want some of my more in-depth thoughts on it, you can go check out my review. The fifth book that I finished was my audiobook for the month, which was Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. This by far was probably my second favorite story that I read. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars because I really loved it. It was wonderful. The world building was absolutely amazing. I loved all the 80s references, but I just felt like I was dragging through the story many times, and there was a lot of info dumpy stuff that was going on through the story that if I had the physical copy, I think I would be able to enjoy a little more. But even with that, it was still very info dumpy in a lot of places that I was just like, okay, I get it. Let's move on. I don't need all this information in this one spot. How about we just get a little bit more of that as we go kind of thing. And I really did like it, like I said, but that kind of info dumpy stuff I'm always kind of like, ugh, about. And my most favorite book that I read this month that was a 5 out of 5 stars for me and was the last book I finished in January was Cloaked in Shadow by Benjamin Alderson. This is the first novel in the Dragori series, and I just did a review of it. But in short, I loved the writing style. It was beautiful and elegant. I loved the character Zachariah and his love interest Hadrian. I loved the world that was starting to build. I loved learning about the magic system and learning about what Zachariah is and what his place is in the world. There was just so many good things to it that I couldn't really find any negatives. But there you guys go. Those are all the books that I read in the month of January. Let me know what you guys read down in the comments below. And if you are participating in any of the readathons that I'm doing in February, because I talked about all of that in my February TBR. Anyway, if you guys did enjoy this video, please do give it a big thumbs up. And if you're not already and you'd like to be, hit that button down below and subscribe to become an owlet in our flock. And I will see all of you guys in my next video. Bye, guys.